Hello and welcome everyone to the Marr Show. Thank you guys for joining me for another fantastic episode. On May the 12th, 1945, a little book called The Three Railway Engines was released, written by the Reverend Wilbert Andre. The following year saw the release of the next book he wrote, Thomas the Tank Engine, and soon became his most famous and most iconic character in all of the Railway series. The Railway series continued on with over 42 volumes written by both Wilbert and later by his son, Christopher Andre. The stories of the Railway series made it into television on October 9th, 1984 with the show Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends, created by Brett Arcroft and directed by David Midden, which brought the Little Blue Tank Engine outside of his home country in the United Kingdom and into homes across the globe. With a cast of memorable characters, along with life lessons about friendship, teamwork, honesty, and compassion, the tales about Little Blue Tank Engine and all of his friends on the island of Sodor has left an impact on many children and adults alike for over the past 75 years. And to celebrate this remarkable occasion, I want to do this special Marr Show episode that I've been postponing for a very long time, and that is to talk about my personal favorite episodes of all 24 seasons of Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. Okay, technically the show is about 40 years old and not nearly as old as the Railway series books, and the celebration should be more focused on the books rather than the TV show. I mean, I love the Railway series. I actually grew up with it as a kid because my Nana Phyllis used to have this big master collection that had all original 26 books written by the Reverend Andre, and I always loved reading through it, looking at the wonderful illustrations, and comparing the stories from the books to the show. That was a really special occasion for me. But for me, and I think for many others, whenever we think of Thomas the Tank Engine, we don't really think about this first, or this, or what in the Sam Funko Pop is that? I think of this version of Thomas, and the show is so wonderful and I still love it, even with it going on to this day with over 24 seasons. And I just want to make this special dedication episode to go through every single season of Thomas and Friends as of currently and talk about my favorite episode per season. It's a big task and there's a lot of episodes to cover up, so just keep in mind these are my opinions, not yours. These aren't like the grand scale best episodes known to mankind. These are just my personal favorite stories that I can relate to, that I hold near and dear to my heart. And let's go ahead and get things started. Oh, hold on. I can't whistle right. From season 1, I've always loved the story Down the Mine. Not only does it have a pretty amusing crash from Thomas, but it's one of those rare moments where Gordon helps Thomas out. And here's where they form an alliance saying, you help me and I'll help you. And unfortunately, you don't see that anymore. Most of the time when you see Thomas and Gordon on screen, they're usually bickering at each other, arguing and making fun of each other. And I would love to see more moments like this where Thomas and Gordon are helping each other and are encouraging each other along the way. By the way, whatever happened to that wrench tool that Gordon uses in not only this story but in Percy Runs Away? It would be pretty neat to see it once more, but considering with all the cranes we have on the island, I can understand why there's no longer a reason to use that tool. Moving on to season 2, there's a lot of great episodes in this season. However, if I had to choose one as my favorite, that title belongs to Old Iron. The scene where Edward is trying to catch up to James is one of David Mitten's best directed scenes hands down. It's engaging, captivating, and the cinematography is so well done to this day. I mean, it just gets me excited. Not to mention, this is one of those episodes where Engine calls Edward old, unreliable, or Old Iron in this case, but Edward isn't portrayed as an old engine who's worn out and feels old and the age is catching up to him, and his iron rods are clicking and clacketing and his back is hurting. Wait, do engines have spines? I don't think so. In fact, when Edward is called from the signalman to stop James, he's not moping about or looking tired. He's actually excited to catch up to James. He's pumped up and ready to save his friend, and it's something that I would love to see more of, because I do understand how Edward feels if an engine keeps calling him old, wanting to retire, that it could get to an engine's feelings, but it's also just refreshing to see Edward ignoring all the compliments and even laughing at James for saying he's late again and just calling him Old Iron. It's sort of refreshing to see. And for my favorite story from season 3 is one of the more controversial episodes in the classic era, and that being Henry's Forest. Without going into too much detail, part of the reasoning why this episode has so much controversy comes from Wilbert Andre himself openly disliking this story, saying that having an engine so close to the track would cause a wildfire to happen, and that the driver not informing the signalman about visiting the forest is dangerous and very irresponsible. And while I do understand from his point of view about this episode breaking several important railway guidelines, there's one other thing he mentions that I find sort of confusing, that being that Wilbur thinks engines shouldn't be interested in scenery. And I don't know why. I mean, the engines are just puffing by, so I mean, why not enjoy the scenery as they're doing their day-to-day jobs? And to see Henry having this close relationship to the forest is something that I really like personally, that I think makes Henry's character more unique compared to Gordon and James. And you feel the emotions as well with Henry, like you see Henry loving the forest, and then when the storm passes and the trees are down and everything, you feel so sorry for Henry because he lost something that was very personal to him. Not to mention the imagery is also breathtaking and beautiful, and the finishing music at the end of this story is so relaxing and peaceful. I just love it. Okay, season 4 was a bit tricky for me to choose, as I love all the narrow gauge stories. I always found it exciting and wonderful to see a different railway that was smaller from the Northwestern Railway and seeing things from the little engine's point of view, as well as, granted, yes, I know this has been said dozens of times from many people, but look at these sets, the lighting, and the scope of the railway that the narrow gauge engines run. It is so beautiful. In fact, one of my favorite videos that I ever made was a music video called When the River Meets the Sea, and half of the footage in that video was from the narrow gauge episodes. I confess, but they're just so beautiful and heavenly. Alright, I'm going off topic here. As I was saying, it was tough for me to choose, but I think I'm gonna go with the most obvious episode that most people will say is their favorites from this season, and that being Gallant Old Engine. It's a gripping story about Renee's determination to get the passages on time, to keep the railway open. The scenes where he plunges through the storm is epic and are so visually pleasing, but also very scary that you're worried that Renee won't make it, and the storm is so fierce and violent. Not to mention, this episode is very inspirational for me. For whenever I feel tired or worn out at work, if I think of this story here and the imagery of Renee's puffing through the storm with a busted valve gear, it keeps me going. It's just one of those stories that I personally love, that is so inspiring to me. If I had a top 5 seasons list from Thomas and Friends, season 5 is gonna be on that list. I remember watching this as a kid and the stories blowed me away. The atmosphere in some episodes have so many feelings and emotions going on. Like a story can start off happy and easygoing, but then could get dark and creepy with massive accidents going on and sorts of different hippy-jeeby vibes that just gives the island of Sodor such an unpredictable vibe to it. Like, sure, the island is beautiful and peaceful at times, but the island does suffer from many unpredictable events that could happen at any time of day or season. Picking one episode from this season was, again, very tough, much like with season 4, but I have to go with Busy Going Backwards. The reason being, it gave us a very clever and unique story for the time that it was released. No one would have ever thought about giving Toad, the brake fan, his own story where he's the lead. And most of the episode is seen Toad giving what he wishes for, going forward like the engines do, while trying to avoid so many close calls from accidents happening. It's a perfect example of the saying, be careful what you wish for. It's a fast-paced story that's thrilling and exciting and very hilarious at times. I really love this one. Out of all the original 7 seasons from the classic era of the show, season 6 is the black sheep for me. It's not like there's a lot of bad episodes in it, just not a whole lot of stories really stand out. And one of the big complaints I have with it is that even though I love Alec Baldwin's narration from season 5, his performance in this season is pretty bad, and you can tell by the sound of his voice that he just wants out of the franchise after the poor reception of Thomas and the Magic Railroad. Though to be fair, he does give a few fun little narration moments throughout the season.
I hope he hurries up. I wouldn't want him to be late for the fireworks. He's after me! I don't think he'll be late, said Duck. We're out of hot air! Shouted a voice. Ah! Cried James. What's happening?
And speaking of humor, one of my favorite episodes from the season belongs to Thomas, Percy, and the Squeak. First off, it's a great example that shows an engine doesn't need to be spotless or shiny to do a really important task, or even a very fancy one like taking a famous opera singer to the ball or something. But probably my favorite moment comes from this scene here, where Alicia Body is opening up Annie and she sees a mouse in the coach and she screams to the top of her lungs, which causes all the windows across the docks to crack.
Definitely a coloratura.
In fact, speaking of screaming, I found this rather interesting fact while looking on the Thomas Wikia page for this episode. Apparently, Alicia Body's scream was used from a Roman scream that appeared from Independence Day. I really did not want to know that. And why, out of all the scream sound effects, why from this movie? With this alien, wait, what was I talking about? And now on to the last season from the classic era, season 7. And this one may be a bit of an oddball to some people, but I really love the episode Bulgy Rides Again. When I watched this for the first time as a kid, I was shocked to see Bulgy after a very long time. And it was even more shocking to see the Fat Controller give Bulgy a second chance, which I always found very touching. It shows that people, or buses in this case, deserves a second chance to redeem themselves, to try something again. Heck, we see Bulgy is wanting to continue carrying passengers, but after a little incident involving some chickens, he ends up becoming a vegetable bus and is happy with his new life. You can see that he is so happy no longer being a hen house. He's learned from his mistakes and is wanting to be born again like a newborn Christian. In fact, this is why I have a very hard time seeing Bulgy in CGI. I mean, don't get me wrong, the voice is amazing, it's pitch perfect, and he looks amazing in computer generated form. But having him return to his original persona, hating railways and wanting to be taken over by road vehicles, I thought was a huge backstep for his character. He went from being redeemed and was happy as a vegetable bus to going back acting like he learned nothing from being a hen house for who knows how long, maybe 20 years or 30, I'm not sure. And to see him just going back to his roots of just hating railways for no reason at all, it's just, I don't know, I may be part of the minority here. Actually, you may retake that real quick. I'm just part of the minority. I feel bad for my pal Bulgy. As a grocery bus, he was so happy, but now seeing this is a bull honky. Now that we're done with looking over the classic era of Thomas, now we're going to take over to the hit entertainment era through seasons 8 through 12. I know these seasons aren't exactly pitch perfect, there's some people that despise them, but for me, I sort of like seasons 8 through 12. I'm not saying every story stands out. I mean, there's some that are more forgettable than others, and some that are just bad, like really bad and stupid. But I really did like a lot of these episodes. In fact, season 8 is personally one of my favorite seasons in the show. It had that vibe where it combined Thomas with the theme and tone of Theodore Tugboat, where it's much more slower and more based on simple emotions than on grand accidents and major stuff going on. And there's a lot of good episodes from season 8 that I love, but I have to choose one, and that episode is Thomas Saves the Day. This episode is very personal for me. I know some people may find it confusing on how, even after all these years of working on his branch line, that Thomas still has trouble on his one part of the track, but for me, I can relate to this episode in a way. For whenever I have like a mentor or a supervisor to help me, to give me feedback or advice, and whenever they're not there because they're on vacation or maybe they're busy with something else, I feel lost, discouraged, worried I'm not going to be able to do the task accordingly in the correct way. But then I just have to remember to not get overly pressured up, to take my time on the task at hand, and to remember the wise words that even though they may not be with me physically, that I still have the words of wisdom and the encouragement to continue on. It's a very touching episode that I've always loved, that I still remember to this day. Like, even at work, whenever I get stressed out or something, I just remember to slow down and take care. For season 9, I actually made a Thomas comedy out of my favorite episode, that being Emily Knows Best. It's nothing grand, but then again, there's not really a whole lot of episodes from season 9 that really stood out. I enjoyed this one the best. For it was interesting to see Emily trying to tell Percy what to do and acting like a leader figure, or a queen in this case. And I've always saw Emily as this bossy sister-like character, not someone who's mean-spirited, but whenever you give her like a leadership role, she becomes very bossy, but she means well, trying to help other engines out. Other than that, this episode's good, I like it personally, plus seeing that aftermath of where Percy took the wrong track, and this huge pile of rocks and broken up trucks with Percy, Mavis, and Toby, it's just, oh, the crash is Season 10 had some better episodes compared to Season 9, and not just because the sudden engine returned after so long of an absence, I swear it's not because of that. My favorite story being It's Good to Be Gordon. Gordon tries to beat his original record, but when needing coal, he takes Henry's special coal instead, which causes Henry to be sick and slowing down, puffing out black smoke, and makes me wonder what in the San Francisco pop they're putting in the engines as fireboxes. I mean, if it's causing that much trouble to Henry, then how come the other engines aren't affecting it? Like, what type of coal are they taking? But the part that I always love is seeing Gordon being so close to the station, but then deciding it's not worth it and going back to rescue Henry and swapping tenders. It's just a heartfelt moment where we see Gordon caring more about his best friend Henry instead of some dumb record that Spencer can easily get a hold of. What? Well, it's true. Up next is Season 11, and much like Season 9, there's not a whole lot of episodes that stand out to each other. However, there is one I do like, and that's Hide and Peep. There's not much I can really say about it, it's just Thomas and Percy playing a game of hide-and-seek while waiting for a ship to arrive. And much like the ending of It's Good to Be Gordon, I love the ending where Thomas asks Cranky to play, but is actually needing to find Percy to do his job. And you get this very rare shot in the model era of this overview of Brendam Docks. It's a really well done shot. Season 12 is rather unique for combining the models with computer-generated faces and people walking around the island. And to me, I thought it was a great decision that they made. Not only was it a final farewell to the models, but I thought it was a great way to ease the viewers into the future animation that the show was heading at the time. Sure, some of the engine faces are a bit odd. I mean, look at Duck. In one episode it's this tiny, and then it's big with cheekbones, and then it's back to small. It's a very odd transition with the engine's faces. But you have to admire the work put into it. As for the stories, again, even though they have a huge variety of characters appearing in some episodes, not many are considered legendary or good in my opinion. Not awful, but none that are well remembered. But for my favorite, I'm gonna have to go with Thomas and the Billboard. I remember watching this for the first time when I graduated from elementary school, and I was blown away by the CGI. The people walking around Nafa Station makes it so lively and busy. Thomas's face being animated and seeing his lips move was mind-boggling. And Michael Brandon's Italian accent! Oh, wait, no, that wasn't groundbreaking. That was just funny and cute.
And you forward, Percy. That's good. Don't worry, I take another photograph. Tell all the engines to meet me at Tidmouth Sheds.
And while the story isn't grand per se, it was sort of ironic seeing Diesel causing mischief and making Thomas upset unintentionally, as the photographer asks Diesel to move up, but Diesel accidentally blocks Thomas, and seeing Thomas trying to retake it with the photographer without Diesel knowing, it's a cute plot, it's nothing that it's gonna win a Nobel Peasy Prize, but it's harmless enough. Not to mention, seeing Thomas so frustrated in this part is so... I don't know why, but I just found that so hilarious.
I am so frustrated.
And now we're coming to seasons 13 through 16, which is the bad era that I call it. I mean, I know some people will count seasons 8 through 12, but when you compare those to seasons 13 through 16, It's, yeah, they win. It's 8 for 12. Better, the Oscar-worthy compared to 13 for 16. Okay, I'm being a bit harsh on this. Seasons 13 for 16 are bad, really bad, but I do admire the passion that the studio, Nitrogen Studios, had when animating the seasons. In fact, the director Greg Terran actually spoke out being a public fan of both the television series and Railway series books. There's not really a whole lot of episodes that I can remember off the bat from seasons 13 for 16, so I'm gonna try my best to talk about some of the adequate. I'm gonna talk about the episodes through those seasons that I find adequate, like Tinkled Pink from Series 13. Yeah, an obvious one for sure, but the idea of James having to wear a different color paint job throughout the day is a fun ideal. It's also sweet to see James lighting up about being pink after hearing Bridget Hat loves the color pink for her birthday party. It's a heartwarming episode and one that works well with the format and the writing of the Nitrogen era. The same goes for Victor Says Yes from season 14. Victor gets overworked with so many engines coming in needing repair, and he can't say no to any engines that are coming in. It's an episode that I can relate to in a way. Whenever people ask me at work about wanting to help them out, I always say yes, of course I'll help you because I love helping people. But I gotta remember as well that like Victor, there's only so much a person can do. There are times where I have to say no because I got so much on my plate that I can't focus on so many other things at once, and I just get so overwhelmed with so much stuff to do. Okay, season 15. This one was very hard for me to pick at least one good episode from. But there's at least one episode that I can watch, and that being Stuck on You. Mostly because this was the episode that gave us the first vocal voice of Butch. Oh sure, Butch appeared several times in the past, making cameos and whatnot, but this is the very first time since his introduction way back in 1998 where he actually speaks. I don't know why, but like, I know he's a minor character, but hearing him speak for the first time was just like, holy crap-a-moly, the guy can actually speak! I always thought he's speaking horns or something, you know? And other than that, this episode is about Butch trying to use his magnet, and the magnet does some dumb stuff and even gets stuck to Thomas, and it's a silly one, but it's one that is a guilty pleasure for me. You know, it's a guilty pleasure. And for those wondering, the award for my least favorite season in the entire show goes to season 16. Sure, at this point they got rid of the constant rhyming from the past few seasons. However, at this point when I first watched them back in 2011, I think, I was done with this whole series. I mean, the whole Fleet Strike storyline was getting so repetitive, so generic, that I was surprised to see me lasting this long, where many hardcore Thomas fans left during like seasons 14 through 15. Though if I had to choose at least one episode from the season, again, another obvious one, but it's Percy and the Calliope. It's a good story about Percy trying to repair the Calliope despite hearing Diesel's comments on it being far from repair and needs to be scrapped. I enjoy it, it's alright, and it has some great fan service in it. By not having Thomas speak in the episode.
Hooray! Hooray!
I will admit, I was kind of stretching things out with those series. Again, there are some potentially good ideals, it's just the execution with the bland writing and limited amount of characters that they could bring every season to computer generated. It's sort of hard to pick out episodes that I think are technically good through those series. But now we come into the good ones, season 17 all the way through 24. From season 17, I used to say that my favorite episode was Percy's Lucky Day, and while I still enjoy it, my favorite story has changed from that episode to Bill or Ben. Andrew Brannon once said that his favorite characters in the show are James, Toby, and the twins, and this story is a great example of how much he loves these two. The twins pull a wonderful prank on Connor, thinking that one of them is faster than Connor and was able to make it to his destination, and sure, the Fat Controller decides to get one of them repainted, that way they can tell Bill and Ben apart, but does that stop the mischief? Of course not! They just both get repainted easily. Bill or Ben is just the twins at their finest. It's hilarious, I love it, it's just delissimo. And speaking of characters being reintroduced, I personally thought that having Annie and Clarabelle being given more roles and screen time compared to the model era was a very welcome addition to the CGI series. They have a lot more personality, are very fun to watch, very hilarious at times, and one of my favorite episodes from season 18 stars these two, not so slow coaches. The reaction to the coaches being pulled by a really fast engine, aka Caitlin, is so hilarious, and this scene puts a smile on my face every time.
How about a race up to Ulfstead Castle?
Oh dear, a race! Please say no. Please say no. Please say no.
You're on, Caitlin.
No!
I also really love the relationship and interactions between Thomas, Annie, and Clarabelle. It's something that we have never gotten in both the books and the model era series, and I personally love seeing these three talking and seeing Thomas being cheeky to the coaches, and also seeing Thomas trying his best to stop Caitlin to catch up with the fast engine so he can rescue Annie and Clarabelle, and hoping to never make fun of going fast or slow for them again. It's a dynamic that I love, and it's one of my personal favorite relationships to come out of the CGI era. Okay, season 19. From this season, my favorite episode is Goodbye Fat Controller! Okay, I know I already did a Goodbye Yellow Brick Road parody a few months ago, but it's a classic Elton John song. I couldn't help myself. Though my personal favorite of his is I Want Love.
I want love, but it's impossible.
The engines think that the Fat Controller is going away from Sodor, when in reality his office is just being repainted. It's cool to see the engines trying hard to make the Fat Controller happy and make him stay on the island, even going as far as to go on strike to prove their point. It's a really touching story, and one that has been done a couple of times, you know, where someone thinks a good friend of theirs is going away and they try to keep that person when in reality they're not leaving. It's something that has been done before, but whenever you get a really good talented writer to do a story like this just right, that is fun and just heartfelt, it makes the episode wonderful overall. Onward to season 20, and this season was very tough for me to choose. There are so many great episodes from season 20 that I personally love. But if I'm gonna have to pick one, it has to go to Tit for Tat. And not just for, oh, it's a railway story being adapted on television, not just because of that. But one of the big things I love about this episode is that I felt so many nostalgic feelings that I haven't felt in a Thomas episode in years. That feeling of Sodor being a real place that you could go to. The feeling of the Wilbert Audrey's touch just all over an episode. And you just feel this greatness. Like, it's hard to explain. Like, I don't want to just say for nostalgia purposes, because again, I grew up reading the Railway series, and for a long time I've been wondering when Mike, Rex, and Bert and the whole Ulster Railway was going to be introduced in the show. And it just makes me feel so good, and this story is so well done. I know there may be some people saying, yeah, this episode isn't a perfect adaptation, like, it's missing a lot of things, not pinpoint accurate to the story, but again, it's an adaptation. They took risk, and that's one thing I really like about The Adventure Begins, is a different adaptation that took some different liberties from the books. And Tit for Tat just does such a wonderful job, and it was also really great to see the Reverend Andre and his friend Teddy actually speaking in a Thomas episode. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool. The other small railway stories I love as well, but Tit for Tat I will forever hold as one of my personal favorites. I just felt so many great vibes when watching this episode. It's just a favorite of mine. Going back to seasons 13 and 16 for a bit, while a lot of the characters are cookie cutter basic engines, one character stood out in those seasons, that being Miss Dowager Hat. Whenever she was on screen, you knew you were in for a treat because she is so enjoyable, full of life, her excitement and energy, not to mention the great performance that the voice actor Keith Rickman gave to her. She just made the episode so much enjoyable when she appeared on screen. So imagine a whole episode where Dowager stars as the main lead. You get Dowager Hat's busy day from season 21. This episode is so enjoyable and so hilarious. The confusing tasks she gives to the engines and the mishaps that happen and all that would just make your ribcage tickle. It's also interesting to see someone else taking care of the railway when Satapa Hat is feeling ill. It's just one of the funniest episodes in the entire show, and personally, I want more stories with Dowager Hat as the main character. I mean, think about it. Maybe she could have an episode where she drives an engine, or is wanting to plan an event that causes a bunch of confusion and delay for the railway, or just, I don't know, Dowager Hat, she's one of my favorite characters. I already mentioned my favorite episode of Season 22 back when I reviewed it along with the Big World Big Adventures movie last year on the show. Rebecca has become a fan favorite for many, including myself. She's bright, full of life and energy, so positive going, and loves complimenting the good of every engine she meets. And that's what makes this episode special. Rebecca halfway through the story feels upset that she doesn't have any special abilities or special qualities that other engines have. However, Marion and Thomas tells her that she is special because she sees the best out of everybody and how hard of a worker she is. Being special doesn't mean you have an odd quirk that no one else does. Even if you don't realize it, the normal things that you do, like helping others, encouraging friends when they're down or tired, even saying polite things to every person you meet, brightening up their day some, is very special. That makes every one of us unique, and this episode is just special because of that. And while we're on the subject of Rebecca, my favorite Season 23 story has her star in it as well, Chucklesome Trucks. This story was so much fun from beginning to end. Watching Rebecca having fun with the trucks despite the truck's best efforts to cause mischief is so adorable and very funny. Even the expressions of not only the engines in shock, but even the blank faces of what just happened from the trucks is so hilarious. Oh, and the cuteness factor spikes when you hear the Japanese dub of Rebecca singing with the trucks. It's so adorable! What can I say? It's a funny episode and one of my favorite Rebecca stories. Now if only they can work on Nia's stories some. And now we come to the very last season, Series 24. I know this is kind of cheating as of the time of recording this on, what date is it? May 14th, 2020. Not all the episodes has been released. There's been some, but not all of them. But for me, there was already one episode from this season that I instantly fell in love with, and I'm still thinking about it to this day, and it's become a personal favorite of mine. I know technically it's a special, not an episode, but
Thomas and the Royal Engine.
This episode, or special, or whatever you call it, has become an instant classic for me from the first viewing. Sure, it may not be as epic or adventurous compared to like Steam Team to the Rescue or Digs and Discoveries, or even with the past DVD specials, but that's why I love it. It doesn't rely on action-packed scenes or big chases to make it interesting. It's just a fun, simple slice-of-life story where Thomas and the Fat Controller are trying to get to London, but many mishaps happen along the way. There's so many great callbacks and nods to the railway series and the television series, and none of it's in your face or forcing down your throat of nostalgia. It's done tastefully. Unlike a certain scene from Sodor's Legend of the Lost Treasure. There's even one line that Thomas says, which I won't dare spoil for those who haven't seen it yet, that got me right in the heartstrings. It was so well done. Oh, and Duchess, how could I forget her? I really hope we see more of Duchess in the future, because she was very fun. She's friendly, she gets stressed out a bit and tends to be forgetful when she has so much she has to do and is under pressure, but she is very fun. I love Duchess. Plus, it's also very refreshing to see Thomas actually making a new friend instead of being jealous or disliking an engine at first going. Seriously, this trend needs to die and never be brought up ever again. Whew. That was a lot to go through. But with any case, those are my personal favorite episodes from all the seasons of Thomas and Friends. It was really hard to choose because there were some seasons that I had more than 10 good episodes that I want to put down, so it was really hard, so please understand how hard this was to make for me. So with any case, that's all the time we have for today, folks. So in the comment section below, let me know what are your favorite episodes per season of Thomas and Friends. And I say every season, so yes, You have to choose at least one episode from seasons 13 through 16. I know it's difficult, but it's possible, trust me. And I know I'm a little bit late with the timing of uploading this for the 75th anniversary, but I mean, every day we should be celebrating this wonderful series. I've grew up with Thomas all my life, and I know technically the show currently is now on a hiatus, or I'm not sure what's going on with Mattel, but whatever the case, whether the series will continue or end with season 24, I have no clue. I just really admire the Railway series, Thomas Friends, and Thomas has always been a childhood friend of mine. So yes, I'll celebrate the wonderful tales of this little blue tank engine in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching this episode. God bless yous, and I will see you all in the next episode of The Del Marr Show. Bye bye!